For those who set out to reach the highest point in all 50 states of the US, Gannett Peak in Wyoming presents one of the greatest challenges. Among the 50 state high points, Gannett Peak is generally considered to be the second or third most challenging to climb, only after Denali in Alaska and debatably Granite Peak in Montana. There are several reasons for this, including the peak's significant isolation and challenging terrain. Deep in the Wind River Range, this mountain is so remote that it cannot be seen from any road despite being over 13,000 feet tall. No trailhead gets even close to the summit, and any route chosen will require a lengthy approach. Gannett Peak has several routes blending various degrees of approach length and technical terrain. Of the two traditional routes with the least technical terrain, the Pole Creek Trail approach from the west offers a 40-mile round-trip distance with about 9,000 feet of elevation gain. For those seeking a more gradually ascending trail and a closer high camp on summit day, the Glacier Trail approach from the east is known for being less steep overall, but at the cost of a longer distance and overall elevation gain at 50 miles and 10,800 feet respectively. Both of these options are primarily Class 1 trail hikes, made challenging by the length. Alternatively, in recent years, routes ascending the west face of Gannett Peak accessed from the Green River Lakes trailhead have been gaining in popularity. Two primary variations exist, both of which reduce overall trip distance. The main difference is that the Wells Creek route takes a more direct ascent to avoid tedious boulder fields, but requires technical 5.6 to 5.7 climbing. The Tourist Creek route avoids the 5th class climbing in favor of drawn-out boulder fields and some additional elevation gain and loss. The two routes unify for the ascent of the west face of the mountain. With a 4-day itinerary, we decided on Tourist Creek, setting out from the Green River Lakes trailhead in the morning of the first day. The first leg of the journey is an 11-mile hike to Three Forks Park, a wide-open grassy meadow along the Green River. Thunderstorms rolled through parts of the Wind River Range most of the morning, but a high-pressure system was inbound. 11 miles in, we moved west off the trail and into the meadow, and we reached a good sheltered place to set up camp for the first night. The next morning, we set out again to the west, towards Tourist Creek. This involves fording the Green River, which at this time of the year was pretty straightforward. Continuing west, this is where careful route finding can save you a lot of time. Tourist Creek flows down the mountainside to the north, with thick vegetation adjacent to it. Further south, the vegetation is more sparse, and we ascended a line in between where there was enough vegetation to stabilize the rock field, but not too much to create bushwhacking problems. Further up, the slope gradient increased, and we continued a rising traverse just south of Tourist Creek. Even with ideal route finding, there is no avoiding the boulder fields that define the main challenge with Tourist Creek. There is no trail past the ford of the Green River. The next 2 days will be spent navigating a variety of tedious boulder fields. At 10,000 feet, if you move back down to Tourist Creek, you can follow a grassy field ascending into some light bushwhacking nearby the creek as it ascends past two small lakes, up until about 10,300 feet. This avoids some challenging boulder hopping to the south of this section, just past the second small lake at about 10,300 feet. From here, take a 90-degree rightward turn, turning up the north side of the cliffs south of Tourist Creek. This is where the route will no longer follow the creek. The section from this turn to Lake Solitude at 11,100 feet was a welcome break from the monotony of boulder hopping. Here, good route finding can avoid most of the rock fields, and travel for this section is fairly easy. Lake Solitude is a true gem of this route. It is one of the highest alpine lakes in the US, yet it is visited infrequently. The route skirts along the west edge of the lake through easy terrain, continuing south now to reach a saddle just south of the lake. Here, a short down scramble of Class 2 is required to reach another small lake, where we continue around the north side of the lake and ongoing now east along a wide ledge separating the cliffs above from the cliffs below leading to Scott Lake. We continue this falling traverse for several miles of some of the most tedious rock hopping and boulder fields that I have encountered. There are two options here, more or less, as you approach Skinny Lake. You can lose about 200 feet of elevation and access grassy terrain leading up from Scott Lake, or you can stick with the boulder field and maintain elevation. More of a personal preference in my opinion. Finally, we have reached Skinny Lake, where we could set up camp and prepare for the summit day tomorrow. From Skinny Lake, the route now continues skirting up the north side of the lake. At the eastern end, you can follow a grassy field up the boulder field. Cliffs exist on the north side of this field, which the drainage creek passes over. It's good to remember that for the descent. The south side is steep and loose. The best route here will follow a zigzag around the cliffs and then back towards the drainage creek to reach the saddle. Continuing east from here, the minor glacier presents very few additional challenges and was neither steep nor crevassed at the time of our ascent. Crampons and an ice axe, however, are good to have for this as it becomes icy farther up. Once off the glacier, we continued our eastern heading with a slight turn north, aiming for the saddle at 13,400 feet. The rock field is scattered with smaller, loose rocks, which makes it hazardous for rockfall, especially if you encounter other teams. Once at the saddle, we ascended south along the final ridge. Sections of this ridge are upper class 3 to lower class 4, and given the icy conditions from the storm 2 days prior, we decided to use ropes for an extra degree of safety. A short scramble later, and we were at the summit. The views truly make you appreciate just how remote this mountain is. Nothing but wilderness around us. We could only guess where on the horizon the trailhead was, but surprisingly we had excellent cell phone reception, the only location along the entire route to have that. The descent follows the ascent exactly, which makes for a long overall trip with the amount of time-consuming boulder fields. And we decided to camp at Solitude Lake on the way out to enjoy one more night in the rugged, remote Wind River Range. Overall, the Tourist Creek route is a bit of a slog. I had to get my hiking boots retreaded because of all the boulder fields, but few places in the lower 48 can offer that degree of isolation in a high alpine setting. It is a hike I would recommend to those confident with route finding and ready for a rewarding challenge. If you liked the video or found it useful, be sure to subscribe.